Hi guys, welcome back. Today's video is going to come with a content warning of suicidal ideation and things of depression, things like that. So take care of yourself first, and if this gets a little too heavy, click off of the video. If you need a break, you can always come back. If you need to skip today's video, absolutely. I will link the article that I am using today in the description box if reading it would be better, but again, take care of yourself and you know what's too much or is not too much for yourself. That being said, today's video is about prenatal depression. So prenatal depression is different and separate from postpartum depression. The reason that I am clarifying that is that some people experience prenatal depression, some people experience postpartum depression, and some people experience both. So you can have one or the other or both. Postpartum depression is little by little becoming talked about a little bit more. Prenatal depression is something that I didn't even realize I struggled with until years after my daughter was born. That being said, this is basically my story of it, and I find it so important to share because I want to make sure that if someone else is struggling currently with it, or if they have, that it's such a lonely feeling. Sometimes it's nice to hear somebody else and what they went through so that you feel a little bit less lonely and a little bit more validated, I think. And then if you are currently pregnant, you recognize these features in yourself or in somebody else, there's at least that first step of reaching out and recognizing what it was, because I didn't even know. I didn't know at all what was going on. And so my fiance was at work, it was the weekend, and he had picked up an extra shift again. He called the overtime baby money cash that could help us pay for the extra expenses that the pregnancy and that the baby would bring. I was in the bathroom. My two nieces and oldest children, two boys, were in the living room. They were playing. I had cooked breakfast. I had tapped into the energy that I really didn't have much to spare. I had served it as soon as it was ready, and all the kids did what kids do. They ate it up, which is fine. But I hadn't eaten yet, and the reason that was such a big deal is that I had already expended all the energy that I could. I had really bad morning sickness, so I knew that if I didn't eat, that I would throw up. I was starving, I was shaking, I was about an hour from throwing up if I didn't hurry up and eat something, but my energy was spent. The kids ran off oblivious. I had a mess to clean, rising nausea, a crushing weight on my chest. I made it to the pantry, spread jelly onto a piece of bread, and ate it quickly. My body rejected the rushed breakfast, and I vomited into the toilet a few minutes later. I washed my face and texted my fiance, "I can't do this. The kids aren't listening. There's so much." He texted back, "Maybe take a 10-minute shower." One time I told him that my first son, this pregnancy was our first, I had two children with the previous partner. I had told him before that when my husband was deployed and I was by myself and my firstborn would cry, because he was such a colicky baby, he would just cry and cry and cry. I didn't know what to do. I would just slip away into the bathroom and take a shower for like 10 minutes, kind of just get that stamina back, go back out and tend to my baby. It was so exhausting. I had no family nearby. We were both military. I barely had any friends in that area because we were so new. It was hard, it was rough, and that was one of the things that I did, and I had told him that, and so he was just drawing from the information that he knew. He wanted to fix this situation, and he was at work, so what could he do but just remind me of things that had worked in the past? But it was totally different this time around. I didn't know it was different, but it was totally different, and he just repeated this advice to me, and that's when it hit me. He didn't know what was going on. I began to hyperventilate. Like, his ignorance on the situation hit me just square in the chest. I was so alone, so utterly alone that it took my breath away. And I ended up having a panic attack and ended up in the shower. I felt like I was going to die. by the time that he was home, the episode was over. I was tired but smiling and just happy that I had some help with the kids. He was going to cook dinner. I didn't really have to worry about it too much. I didn't know that I had prenatal depression until years after my daughter was born. And I think it's because so many of the symptoms of prenatal depression mimic actual pregnancy symptoms. So mood swings are so normal, usually normal in pregnancy. There's some days when the smallest things can set you off. I remember one time I was crying because I wanted cheese on my cheeseburger, and for whatever reason I was explaining it totally different and in a way that they didn't understand, and I kept getting I got a burger without cheese, a regular burger, and I do have a YouTube video out about my social anxiety, so going back up and complaining about it is just not something I did or do. But I finally got like the courage to say, yeah, I said it weird, I guess, another time, and they brought back this cheeseless cheeseburger, like this, just, it's a burger, and I just felt so defeated. And it's funny now looking back at it, and there's a lot of people who will tell you that they started crying at the craziest things, and that's totally normal. But with prenatal depression, it's different. The mood swings are more severe. The negative emotions are longer rather than shorter. Things that might not be a big deal are overwhelming all of a sudden. And I also have to pause and put a little bit of backstory here. My first husband did die by suicide, and I know that it impacted my pregnancy. Or at least I'm pretty sure it did. I feel like I felt guilty about being excited about a new pregnancy, because at that point I felt like I was happy that he was gone. I know that that's not true. Like, me finding a partner and continuing to grow my family has no bearing at all on my feelings towards my husband, but somehow it felt like a betrayal almost. And so my mood was just all over the place. I remember one night, Tim was gone again, working, and I was just sobbing, wailing, like it really was. It was just this wailing cry, because I started thinking about the next day, and the next day was the anatomy scan, and I just had flashbacks to my husband and I looking at our boys through the ultrasound, and it just was such an emotional thing. I don't even know why now, but it hurt me so bad. But then the next day I was laughing and smiling and excited, and we saw my daughter, and it was like a roller coaster that I couldn't get off of, that I didn't want to be on, and no one knew. Another symptom that I get a lot when I'm pregnant is, I guess, that pregnancy insomnia. It's pretty common to just have your mind racing a little bit, difficulty sleeping, you're getting bigger and things like that. That's a thing. But with this pregnancy, I didn't sleep like almost at all. It was so hard for me to turn off my brain, and so I was always sleep deprived, even before I got very big and heavy, and that 9th month of pregnancy. Lack of sleep affects mental health. Lack of sleep affects your mood. There's studies that show that lack of sleep feeds into depression, and so if you already have something that you're struggling with, it's going to get even worse. The morning sickness that I experienced with my daughter lasted a lot longer than what I was used to. I didn't have hyperemesis. So hyperemesis is a medical condition where you just can't keep anything down. And I've known people that had to be hospitalized for weeks and weeks on end because they couldn't even keep down water. And obviously you need water or what, right? So you go into the hospital, you're admitted until you get better, and sometimes that can be for a little bit. Sometimes it's every now and again you're admitted just to get your fluids up, then you're discharged, and sometimes you stay for a very long time. Luckily, I did not have that, but it still took a toll. I really needed to eat at very specific time intervals. So if I ate too late, I would throw up. If I ate too much, I would throw up. If I didn't eat enough, I would throw up. If I got too hot, I would throw up. And so it was not the most fun. I remember going to the amusement park one day because I thought, you know what, it'll be fine. I need to walk and stuff like that. My older boys are getting kind of sick of being inside the house, and we went, and I ended up throwing up because it was too hot, and then at that point everything's ruined. We have to go home. The boys are disappointed, and then I'm feeling like the worst mother ever because I can't enjoy my kids the way that I used to, and just, I don't know, maybe it was just a lot of guilt for everything. Things that weren't even my fault, really. You know, I can't help throwing up, and I can't help morning sickness. I can't help any of that stuff. So it was really difficult, and I think I blamed myself for a lot of stuff and felt guilty for a lot of stuff. Sometimes with prenatal depression, people withdraw a lot, and I know I was withdrawn, but I honestly don't know. I don't know if I was withdrawn just because I was so sick all the time, or if I was withdrawn because I didn't feel like if I didn't have the energy. I was always tired. It's not like a lot of my friends lived nearby anyway, so I wasn't really reaching out as much. There's other symptoms of prenatal depression: poor adherence to prenatal care, decrease in appetite, trouble concentrating, anxiety about the health of the pregnancy, not bonding with the pregnancy like normal. I know that sometimes people don't bond a lot with the pregnancy, but typically there is some form of bonding there. I felt so isolated and so alone and crazy. Like, I felt insane, and I had no idea why. I tried not to bother anyone. So you know what, now that I think about it, I really didn't want to bother anybody. So maybe I was very withdrawn. I did text my best friend a lot, and I would just text and text and text and then delete it. All of it, just delete it. And at best, I texted about the fights that my fiance and I had, because I don't even know what we were fighting about, but I think he knew that I was withdrawn. But we had moved in with each other not that long ago. We were kind of blending him with my boys and starting this long-term relationship. We'd been together a few years, but we were still getting to know each other. This was his first experience with pregnancy, and there was a lot of butting heads, and there wasn't screaming or that type of fighting, but definitely a lot of conflict, and I would just withdraw. I remember one time we argued, and I ended up locking myself into the bathroom, and the boys were outside of the bathroom kind of knocking like, "Mom, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like sobbing. I could barely talk, and he shushed them away. He like, "Give me a minute." And I remember just being so angry that he would send them away. I don't know why. But I finally opened the door, and he knelt in front of me, and he said something like, if you don't talk to me, we're not going to make it, right? Because communication is very important in a relationship. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to die. Like, I'm dying. I'm going to die. And he's worried that we're going to break up. The scariest day of my pregnancy was the day that the boys were in the living room. And I felt that crushing weight of just being alone all by myself. And I remember thinking, like, God, it would just be so good if I just wasn't here anymore. I don't want to be here. I'm so tired of feeling like this. And I remember thinking, like, I can't leave the boys alone, though. You know what I mean? Like, they've already lost a dad. They can't lose a mom. And I still wouldn't say that I was suicidal because I didn't want to die. I just, like, obviously I was scared. I didn't want to die. I felt like I was dying. I wanted help, but I just didn't want to be, if that makes sense. But I was like, God, if I leave, what happens to the boys, you know? And then I had this thought of, they can just come with me. And in that moment, I totally understood why women pack their kids in the car and drive off and, like, drive into a body of water or something, because there's no plan. Just figure it out on the way. But the idea of all of us being gone felt so safe and warm and caring, it was a relief, the idea of it. Like, I felt so relieved. I felt almost euphoric with the idea of it. Like, I finally found the solution. And then, I don't know why, but like I realized what I was thinking, kind of. Like, kind of realized the gravity of what I was thinking, and that just knocked me over, basically. It pretty much, it almost knocked me over. I was horrified, and I was terrified of myself. Like, before I was afraid of dying, and now I was scared of me. I felt dangerous, and I didn't trust myself. Before all of this, I remember, we all read those articles where the mom does, is newborn, 3 babies at home, is in the car, and then drives into the ocean or whatever. And I've never felt like angry at her. I've always been sympathetic in a sense of like, wow, she was really struggling. No one noticed. But I didn't understand. Like, I still felt for the kids. Like, the idea of it, even now, the idea of it sounds horrifying from a mother's perspective, from like my perspective, looking at the kids like, oh my gosh, your mom like betrays you, basically, because that's what it is, right? This person you trust is now doing something that she shouldn't be. But before, it didn't feel like that. Before, like that one day, for a moment, it felt maternal and safe and obvious and like taking care of my kids. I don't know, maybe that felt like a betrayal to me and myself as a mother. I remember one story that I read that haunted me afterwards, because it was a mom who had a newborn, and she had her 2 or 3 other young kids at home, and this was within weeks. Like, I think the baby was only like a few weeks old, but she texted her mother-in-law, was like, I feel crazy. And that was her saying, like, help me, I feel insane, like I feel crazy. And that day or the next day, her husband left her by herself at home and went to visit his parents, the mother-in-law, his mom. He went to go visit his parents. And when he came back home, they were all dead because of her. And I remember reading the article, this was before everything, and turning to my fiance and saying, like, oh my God, listen to this. And I was like, why would he leave her like that? And he shrugged. He was like, well, maybe he just, newborns are hard. Maybe he just needed a break. And I was like, but shouldn't he have known her? Of all people, shouldn't she have been the one that needed the break? She's the one healing. She's a few weeks postpartum. You have like a placenta-sized wound inside of your uterus that's healing. You're still bleeding. Your hips are still kind of going back to normal. You're emotionally just all over the place normally. And she had already texted her mother-in-law that she felt crazy, and she still had her toddlers. Why did he leave her? And I know some people are probably listening and being like, well, why didn't you say anything and things like that, but I didn't know what to say. I had no idea. It took me 2 years. My daughter is 4, almost 5, and it took me 2 years to finally start talking about it. There's a lot of shame with any type of mental health issue, especially if it centers around not feeling like you're able to take care of your children. There's a lot of shame and not enjoying, and not even like shame, but there's a lot of stigma around not enjoying your pregnancy. Like, you can't even complain about being pregnant. You can't complain about having kids. You can't do any of that stuff. You can't reach out for any type of help without somebody being like, well, this is what you signed up for. There's a lot of stigma around it, and there's a lot of, not just stigma, you don't know what to ask or say. After I wrote the article, there were a lot of people who reached out to me and gave me their own stories. There were several women who reached out and said that they had never felt so terrified in their life. And when they knew it was connected to that pregnancy, and they never had any more kids, whether they wanted to initially or not. They were just, no, I'm not going to survive another one if this happens to me again. Most didn't have postpartum depression, interestingly enough, but a few did. And that was also terrifying and an awful ordeal. One woman told me that when she reached out for help, the psychiatrist was not comfortable treating a pregnant person. The obstetricians did not feel comfortable treating mental health issues because that's not their lane. And when they tried for a midwife, she didn't want to say anything either because that person, she wasn't her patient. And they kind of just had this air about like, we don't know what to do with you because we've never dealt with somebody who wanted to hurt her kids. And she was suicidal, but she didn't want to hurt her unborn baby. She wanted help. Obviously, she didn't want to hurt her baby. So what kind of language are we using for women who actually finally get the courage or the words collected together? And it's so difficult to even find the help. And I think what helps, at least, is talking about it and sharing it, as much as it's really nerve-wracking and vulnerable feeling. We need to talk about it, and we need more awareness of it, and it is different than postpartum depression. We need prenatal depression screening and prenatal anxiety screening and just mental health screening for pregnant people during prenatal visits. We need to stop waiting for intuition or instinct or the pregnant person to reach out, because sometimes it's difficult to explain. I wouldn't have been able to explain all of this, not then. My daughter's 4, almost 5, and I finally have the words together to put out an article and a video about it. And it's been years in the making, and I'm still really processing the trauma of. It's difficult to talk about, it's difficult to admit, and sometimes there's this, people ask, why didn't you say anything? And the truth of that is you feel like you're drowning. So not even if I had the words, I'm not even sure if I'd be able to say something, because when you feel like you're drowning, I honestly felt like if I were to open my mouth and ask for help, the whole entire ocean would have poured into my mouth. My head was underwater. You don't yell for help underwater because nothing happens. More water goes in, that's all. And that's what it felt like. I wish I had more advice, and I wish I could say that this will never happen to anybody again. But based off of the reactions that I had from the article that I wrote, it happens too often. We don't have the resources set, at least in the United States. We need more awareness. We need providers to be a little bit more proactive with it. And we need to educate those closest to the pregnant person, partners, family, friends. This needs to be a little bit more mainstream so that if there are any red flags and someone is on the outside looking in, they can kind of mention it. I would have probably benefited from some sort of questionnaire. I know, like my pediatrician's office, after I had my 4th, so I did have another baby afterwards and did not have the same experience, thank goodness. They did a depression screening. So it wasn't a prenatal one. Well, I guess I would have gone beforehand anyway, but when I was taking my 4th there for his little well checkup for 1 year after I had him, so for the entire first year of well baby visits, they screened me for postpartum depression, and it was amazing. That it was like the greatest idea. It like blew my mind that a pediatric office would do that, because they see us for the year after we have a baby, and postpartum depression can hit up to a year, probably. I've heard up to a year after having a baby. I don't know if after that it would be called something different. But sometimes you can be okay for a few months, and then postpartum depression hits 6 months in, 9 months in, however long in, and then people miss it. We get seen, what, if you go to the hospital, you have your baby, you get seen once, maybe twice after you have the baby. They do a 6-week postpartum depression screening. Mental health resources are low here in the United States, and we need them to go up. But for right now, I've linked what I have found down in the description box. Check them out. Check in with each other. Be nice to each other. Be kind to yourself. And we'll get there, one story at a time. It's a little bit difficult for me to talk about, but I am glad that I have it out there. I am glad that I've written the article. I'm so grateful to all the people that comment and send me emails and just share their own stories with me, because I think that shows that we all need somebody to talk to. We all need to feel less lonely about all of these mental health issues. And I think that's one of the biggest barriers, is that loneliness. And sometimes that fear that we're the only ones, that we're the crazy ones, that no one else is going through our struggle. But I promise somebody else out there is. Somebody is going through what you're going through right now. Somebody has gone through and gotten out to the other side. And I've gone through prenatal depression, and I'm still here. And I got through it. I think, honestly, it was skin of my teeth, I'm pretty sure. But now I know, and I am doing my best to start this conversation so that nobody else feels like this alone. And if they figure it out early enough, they can get help, and they can not have to feel crazy. They can feel like anybody else that is going through a prenatal issue, right? One of these days, it'll be different. And one of these days, we'll talk about it like anything else. And here's to one more story for everybody who has gone or is going through it. I forgot to say to subscribe and share and like and stuff at the beginning, but I'll probably put like a little banner or something when I edit. I hope we can continue these conversations about mental health. I don't know how to sign off on that. That seemed like a really bad talk. It seemed like a really big, heavy talk. Well, I think that maybe you could follow it up with a kitten video, get that oxytocin boost, and stream your favorite video or read a book or something. So this is not like the last thing that you think about today. If you want to share your story, I will actually probably put my email down in the description box as well. Feel free to comment, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. And then again, if you want a little bit of privacy and you want to message me, a lot of people do that. I will put my email if you want to share your story as well. And that is all for this episode. Have a good day, and kitten videos, okay? Kitten videos.